Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Now, as I mentioned in my last community post, today I'm going to be doing a video which is based off of a blog post I wrote in April 2021. This was the final post in my Dante themed blogging from A to Z April event, which runs every year, and I decided to Zealotry for the letter Z post. I thought that would be like, really great, basically like summing it up of the entire theme. It was, like a surprise to me. I didn't like think about that, but it was just, so absolutely perfect. And it's going to be, like what Dante's life and times can teach us about the dangers of zealotry, a lesson which is, like as old as time, not just about, Dante and his world, but, just for all time. So let's just get down with it. The Zealots were a band of resistance fighters in Roman Judea, active from the years 6 to 73 of the Common Era, who sought to expel the occupying Romans by any means necessary. A subgroup called Sicarii, violent men, or daggermen in Latin, killed people opposed to this war. According to historian Josephus, the Zealots committed mass suicide on Masada, rather than surrender to the Romans or keep fighting on under siege. But modern archaeological investigation has revealed this probably didn't happen, and also for that reason, like, not wanting to celebrate like mass suicide and like giving up and surrendering in the face of enemies. In the modern era, I'm not sure like when exactly this started, but IDF soldiers in the land of Israel are no longer sworn in at Masada, which was like the case for many, many years. They're currently now sworn in at the Valley of Destroyed Communities in Yad Vashem to like basically remind the soldiers what they're fighting for, to protect the Jewish people, keep our indigenous homeland safe, and like make sure there is never, ever, ever, God forbid, another Shoah where people are like totally killed in diaspora and have no safe place to run. But so regardless, because of this probable urban legend about the mass suicide at Masada, the word zealot now refers to any rigid fanatic for a political, religious, or other cause. Medieval Italy was beset by zealots in the form of the Guelphs and Ghibellines. They had been fighting since 1125, the result of a German power struggle between the Pope and Holy Roman Emperor, spilling over into another region. Even long after the Pope and Emperor had patched things up, people continued fighting and drawing rigid lines for the next few centuries. Each side believed they were in the right, and that the other side was unacceptably wrong, to the point of needing to be quashed and brought to heel. They saw no room for compromise or agreeing to disagree peacefully. When Count Ugolino della Gherardesca, a Ghibelline, married his daughter to a Guelph to try to secure his power against hostile enemies, he instantly became persona non grata and started down the tragic, violent path which ultimately led to his starvation, death, in prison. And it's like one of the most famous stories in Inferno about, Count Ugolino chewing at that other guy's skull. It's like so, like, graphic and like just so absolutely memorable. And I do have a blog post I wrote about Count Ugolino. Maybe I'll turn that into a video at some point. And as well, I also did a blog post about the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. Also, maybe do that about a video in the future. Even after the Guelphs emerged victorious as the leaders of Florence, called Fiorenza in the Middle Ages and Firenze in modern Italian, after the 1289 Battle of Campaldina, which Dante also participated in, it still wasn't good enough. Before long, they began bickering among themselves and split into white and black factions. According to legend, it all began when someone yelled at his nephew for throwing a snowball. A few days later, the nephew hit his uncle. The uncle didn't think it was a big deal, but his son Focaccia did. Focaccia went after his cousin, cut off his hands, and killed his cousin's father, all because of a petty little fight about a snowball. And like this was like kind of like really surprising to me. I was like mentioning something about the Guelphs and the Ghibellines on my Facebook page. Like I had done like auto translate, and like the last names of some of these guys were like literally translated out of Italian into English. And like, for example, one of them was like crazy people. And I was just kind of like thought that was really funny. And like this guy like is asked in like complete seriousness, was white and black Guelphs about racial stuff? Like seriously, like the white and black like racial like categorization in the modern US, that just wasn't a thing at all in like medieval Italy or anywhere in Europe. Like it kind of like frustrates me when people like project their like, US centric or like 21st century understanding of the world onto like much different like places and times. It's just like seriously, like think outside of your own what you know. But so anyway, Black Guelphs teamed up with Prince Charles of Valois, brother of King Philippe IV, Philip the Fair of France, to seize control of Florence, while Dante was with a white Guelph delegation to the Pope in Rome. Much of Florence was destroyed during their dominance-asserting rampage, and many white Guelphs were tried on phony charges, found guilty by kangaroo courts, heavily fined, killed, and or condemned to exile. Some, like Dante, were tried in absentia. And this is from the Book of the Nail, the State Archives of Florence from the 10th of March, 1302, which was basically nailed up all over the town. And I have this in both the original Italian and the English translation. Alighieri Dante is convicted of bartering, fraud, falsehood, willful misconduct, malice, unfair extortion practices, illicit proceeds, pederasty, and is sentenced to 5,000 florins fine, perpetual interdiction from public office, perpetual exile and absentia, and you take him to the stake so that he dies. That's just awful. Like, oh, no wonder he wanted to avoid it, or trying to take back the city and win control and get the Black Guelphs out of power so he could return to his homeland and have all these ridiculous charges thrown out and not wanting to pay that fine. Dante had his property and money seized, which meant he had no way of paying that huge fine, even if he had wanted to. After he refused a 1315 offer of amnesty, on the grounds that it would mean admitting to crimes he was innocent of, orders were put out to behead him if he were caught. When his 4 children came of legal age, they were sent into exile too, deemed guilty by association. Can you just imagine what world literature would look like if, God forbid, that he had been burnt at the stake, caught or beheaded? We would not have the Divine Comedy or some of the other political treatises and stuff and poems he wrote when he was in exile. So thank God that horrible thing was avoided. And obviously that does happen in my alternative history. Oh, by the way, I am doing this video now because I just finally recently got back to my alternative history about Dante and Beatrice. About it had been on hiatus since April of 2022 was the last time I had worked on it. For maybe I can talk about that more in a future post. But anyway, I'm so excited to be back to it, and that's inspiring me to do more Dantean content. So anyway, in the alternative history, he obviously still goes into exile, but he has a premonition, a horrible dream about something going to happen in Florence. So he comes back to the city, and he wants to get his wife and children out of there until the situation dies down. But obviously it doesn't go the way he expects. Beatrice and their youngest child, their only son Brunetto, they disappear while he's taking care of his 3 older daughters and his little half sister Gaetana, getting them into the carriage so they can be safe. So anyway, that's just a really much more dramatic complication than just going into exile like he did in real life. And I'm really looking forward to getting to that part of my alternative history. And so anyway, there's a teaching that the Second Temple, while obviously physically destroyed by the Romans, was truly destroyed because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. And I also mentioned that at the end of my other alternative history about the rule of Tsar Alexei II, and he's talking to one of his sons about why he chose the course he did for ruling, and he talks about his one of his friends, and when he was living in Paris, a rabbi taught him this thing too, and that basically was one of the things that most strongly informed his whole reason for ruling the way he did. And so anyway, this internecine bickering tore apart the Jewish community from within. Sects like the Sadducees, Pharisees, who by the way were nothing like they are falsely depicted throughout history. They were actually the good guys of Judaism and the ones who helped it to survive the destruction of the temple, but that's obviously a subject for another video. The Essenes and the Zealots constantly clashed and were unable to unite as a single front against their common enemy. Too many times throughout history, people have forgotten we are all created in the image of God and share a common humanity, a divine spark within each of us. And I also believe animals are created in the image of God, and they have souls as well, perhaps even greater souls than humans, because they just love and accept everyone without question. They don't care oh, you're black, or you're white, or you're in a wheelchair, or you're gay, or you're just this and this that. They just love people who treat them well. They don't even care what you look like or where you've been or what you believe. These people divide the world into self and other, and never the twain shall meet. Once zealously committed to a cause, it's a quick leap to dehumanizing and mistreating the other side. In De Monarchia, which I also have a video and blog post about, Dante idealistically dreams of a unified world ruled by an enlightened emperor, guided by pure love, charity, justice, and selflessness. When we unite as one, we most live up to our divine potential, since we were created in the image of God, and God is one. And that's also, as some of you might know the central prayer of Judaism, the Shema, like "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And like many people, I also have had this custom since I've learned about it. The word the final word of the prayer is Echad, which means obviously one in Hebrew, and like we emphasize Echad, like to make sure like we're saying like one instead of, God forbid, Echat, which means other. So that's just like something really interesting you might want to take into account, and just like something really like interesting to know. But I'm sorry if I'm overusing the word interesting. Dante believed God created us to make full use of our highest intellectual potential, and that it's easier to do this when we have universal peace, like my thoughts exactly. We can't accomplish this beautiful, lofty ideal very easily if we're beset by strife, wars, political fights, and rigid zealots who can't accept any views but their own. Let us strive to see beauty and truth in everything and everyone, instead of behaving like zealots. Our every step should be guided by the force behind everything in creation, the love that moves the sun and the other stars. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate seeing comments in my posts, because it like really gives me a lot of motivation to keep going, particularly since I have such a tiny channel. And obviously, if you haven't, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. And I will see you guys again very soon. Thanks for watching.